Right. So coincidentally, today we are meeting for the eighth time, and we're talking about the eighth sign, Scorpio. I won't hide that this is my favorite topic and my most interesting planet. But I'm very prejudiced because I got a lot of it, and it's not always easy, as you probably know. But I'm very happy that we've got so many other Scorpios with us today, so I can get to you to say your experiences and your opinions, and I'm sure there is so much we can discover together, I hope. And I wanted to maybe start a little bit in the beginning, like I used to do before. I won't spend too long, but because I really have so much to say about Pluto, and there are many of us that read Dane Rudier. I wanted to pick up a few points from his book, uh, this one. I'm sure Dwayne knows it very well. Do you know that book? It's called The Galactic Dimension of Astrology. The sun is also a star. It's a small book, but it's really powerful, really good. And that book is covering the three trans-Saturnian planets, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and many things around them. And it's a bit unusual. It's a bit different from what we may read in other places. But to me, this is really the essence of Pluto, because it's one of those, planets archetypes which is so misunderstood. And usually we are tending to think of it very negatively, to connect it with lots of problematic aspects of our characters and of things that go on out there in the world as well. But actually, Pluto has lots of hidden treasures, and I hope that today we can go through a few of them and see how we can use that planet as inhumane and transcendent it is, and not easy to control, not easy to really directly work with. Still, I think we can do a lot with it. And first of all, I wanted to tell you that I don't think that you have to be a Scorpio or to have even a single planet in Scorpio to connect well with Pluto and with this principle. I think every sign and every combination is, capable of understanding the principle and of doing a great job with it. As long as we don't, even Scorpios, I think, run the greater risk of playing it wrong, because the energy with us Scorpios is so compulsive that we cannot, it requires a bit of an extra effort to not become too preoccupied with it, or to start thinking that you really know it better than others, which is another danger which I have had to overcome myself during, studying astrology. And a few things that Roger is talking about. He talks about many things. I won't go through everything, of course, but feel free to interrupt me at any moment and, to interject, tell what you think. And this is a discussion. I don't want to, convert it into a talk, but I wanted to share with you a few things which hopefully we can start with, and then let's see where this is going to take us. So Pluto is very feared, and mostly because when we have a Pluto transit, and that's the most compelling effect we can feel from that planet over our chart, the situations that it triggers are normally very painful, very hard to deal with, very transformative, and there is normally no way back after a Plutonian crisis. Something very direct and categorical and final happens. And I don't think the planets are actually doing anything to us directly. It's just a cycle, and the cyclic pattern of every life and every chart is just inevitably bringing us every now and then to a period of time when we need to close a page and open another. But with Pluto, this is the most difficult process, the most one that we resist, tend to resist a lot. There are other transformational planets. All of them can be. We've got Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. They're all planets of transformation. But Pluto is really the most important final death and rebirth planet. And when we speak about death and rebirth, this is not literal. That's one of the ways this planet is so misunderstood, as it's often connected directly with death, with physical death. Well, I tend to think more of Saturn as physical death, the limits of the body, the limits of a human, physical reality and so on. Yes, Pluto can also bring death, but the kind of death that Pluto is about and Scorpio is about is the death of whatever we are, or whatever we think of ourselves or we have attached ourselves to, people, material possessions, all sorts of things, ideals, ideas, everything you can think of. These are the sort of things that die. So we die with Pluto to be transformed, reborn in another way. So it disintegrates, it breaks everything to pieces, but it always does it for a reason. And the point at which people can start, I think, liking Pluto and loving Pluto and working with it is when they realize that it's a very fair judge. And it's not, it's about natural law. It's a regulator of the natural law. So if something has run its course, if something is not working for us anymore, it needs to go. It will create the situations and the conditions to dispose of it and to start anew. But because Saturn is so strong, normally, with everyone, Saturn bounds us within all sorts of structures, within all sorts of things that we're used to. Families, jobs, relationships, whatever. And these things are very difficult to let go. And that's what Pluto wants from us, to let go. And not all the time, but in some crucial, important moments, the Plutonian crisis moments. And when we have this, if we have this understanding and we believe in that's always for the good, it's much easier to go through it and to voluntarily assist with the process. What Rudyard is saying, that Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto work together somehow. And they are kind of different stages of this transformation that eventually Pluto brings, but it never comes just out of the blue, Pluto. We normally have some sort of signs coming first from Uranus, then first Uranus wants to shatter the Saturnian structure and somehow let us out, as we spoke about Uranus last week. Then if we listen to that and if we cooperate with that and are not too shocked by Uranus and too shattered by Uranus, then we move on and we start changing our habits, our adjustments, our way of life, Neptune, and all sorts of illusions start falling apart, the Neptunian glamour and so on. And this is a preparation. If this goes well, says Rudyard, then Pluto is not so something to be feared so much. Pluto becomes a welcome transition to something that's a new life, a completely new way of life. By the way, another probably pretty strange idea, which I'm sure especially if you read that section of that book, you see that it's actually very logical by Rudyard, is that Pluto is related to two signs, not just with Scorpio, but also to Aries, similarly to how Mars is related to Aries and Scorpio. So we can think of these two planets as two levels of instinctual reality, the everyday surface level reality of Mars, and then Pluto is something like Mars, but on a higher transcendental level. And these two planets combine Aries and Scorpio. And why I'm saying this is because I haven't really seen this anywhere else. Maybe other astrologers are also, not just Rudyard, but I thought it's very interesting how if we imagine Saturn as Capricorn is the peak of Saturnian power, let's say, then we've got three signs after Capricorn. We've got Aquarius, Pisces, and then Aries. So if Aquarius is related to Uranus, Neptune to Pisces, then there is something around Aries that we can connect to Pluto. This may sound a little bit strange, because you may say, how come the first sign of the zodiac to be related to the last planet, and they have, maybe at first glance nothing in common. But what Rudyard is explaining is that, yes, Raven, do you want to?
Yeah, I just want to interject that at one time, Scorpio was, I heard, two signs, Libra and Scorpio, and that they got divided. If that were so, then it would bring the opposition into it.
That's a good point. I haven't thought about that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, sometimes.
Have you heard that? Have you heard that Libra and Scorpio were the same ones?
Charles Carter you know, the old astrologer Charles
Yeah.
he writes in one of his books, I can tell you later which one, goes through the signs briefly, and he says that Libra didn't exist in the old tropical zodiac.
Yeah.
And it was from Virgo we went to Scorpio. So in that sense, maybe that's what you're saying, that Libra was part of Scorpio somehow.
Yeah.
And it's one of those, you know, human images, signs, Libra, that came later because initially the tropical zodiac was just animals in it. Yeah, something like that. But I don't know a lot of it. But yes, thinking about that, it makes sense. But why Aries? Because Rudy was saying Aries is the sign of germination in nature. When the seeds are on the ground, they're like buried underground, and they are breaking so that they can sprout out. And this is a Plutonian, he says germination is a Plutonian process. This is the rebirth part of Pluto. So the death and rebirth in nature actually happens around the spring equinox. And he's giving an example of this parallel we can make with Christianity, with, you know, the resurrection of Christ and the 3 days after the resurrection of Christ, which is very much to do with this dark, how is it called? Dark night of the soul that we talk about when we talk about Pluto. You know, going underground, going in the depths and going into the dark so that something can be prepared there. It's a preparation. It's not a final, you know, total dying. It's actually a death which, when it happens, it feels like it's final and it's irreversible. But actually, the Pluto kind of death is there for a reason to, you know, to transform the substance. You know, if we talk about ourselves, then we need to become different people from what we were before that Plutonian crisis, and to, you know, reintegrate. But what he's also saying is that Pluto is not governing this side of that happens after the crisis. Pluto doesn't control the process of whether we are actually going to manage to do that, whether we're not going to be completely discouraged by whatever happened to us during the Pluto crisis, and whether we manage to see the hope and see the future and kind of restructure and everything. And this is to him something that may come after Pluto, another planet which may be governing that. We talked a little bit before about this, the Persephone planet. Maybe it won't be called like this. In society, so let's think about Pluto. What's Pluto as a big force in society? Well, what this is about for you? How do you see it?
Chinese Communist Society committee.
Like a communist committee?
The political aspect of China, not the populace, but the dictators in control. I mean, that to me seems very Plutonian, and from my point of view, very dark.
Yeah, I also see it as a dictatorship, right?
Yeah. Now, you see, that's one of the things I was going through for today, that especially Roger is saying that it's probably not such a good idea, as far as I understood it, to always connect Pluto with these sort of dark forces. As I think, as far as he says, it's a frustrated Mars, which brings a negative Pluto kind of thing. So if Mars function on an individual level is frustrated, and someone is not able to, you know, has some sort of complexes or power struggles get born out of this, when, you know, dictators are sometimes, you know, problematic Mars people, or when Pluto is not recognized as a positive force, it becomes a bit prematurely used. Like if you have chaos everywhere, the first thing that people want to do is to start ordering things again, and to order them in a very extreme way, which is not, it's still premature. So a lot of authors, you can look at also a great book by Howard Porter's, The Gods of Change. You probably know that one. It's a brilliant part about Pluto in it. And he also explains how when something negative happens or stressful happens, we need to wait a little bit and kind of return back to basics for a while until the dust settles, so that we don't get under the compulsiveness of Uranus and Neptune that kind of pushes into a direction to react, you know, straight away. Like now, you know, now we are living through unprecedented times. And probably everyone is scared, somehow shattered, and losing things, and disorienting, and so on, and being angry about it. So it's very natural and normal, probably, just want straight away to do something about it. Either fight against one side or fight against the other side, or support a cause, or whatever. But what both of them are saying is that with Pluto, we need to, because the whole thing needs to be looked from a distance and understood before we act. Otherwise, it becomes this premature Pluto, which goes into those then hard things about dictatorship, power struggles, violence, and policing state, whatever, all those sorts of keywords we all know about with Pluto, because we don't want to lose the Neptune hopes. We don't want to, the Saturn boundaries to be, our boundaries to be crossed. And we cannot let Pluto do what it needs to do, the transformation business, and to be allies with it, so that eventually, when the time comes to start the new thing, it can be started from a point of view of understanding, and not, just reactionary. And when Pluto becomes reactionary, it's really dangerous, because it's a very powerful force. It's like this nuclear force that we cannot control. It controls us. And what Dwayne said earlier about the centralizing thing about Pluto, how Pluto, Roger says, is looking for connecting us with our center, with what we really are. It's like he says it's a vertical action. It's not a horizontal action. So if we're not able to realize what we want to do, really understand, then it's just the Pluto in society is this feeling that we all have, like the common humanity feeling, that everyone feels the same way because they're people, those instincts, those fears, those sort of things, and they get activated as a mass reaction, and we start doing the mob effect. There are so many different examples of that in history, and especially during major Pluto transits like now. So now is probably a very fertile time for things to really radically change for the better eventually, after some painful transformation. But at the same time, we're probably going to see a lot of negative Pluto. Well, that Hades, Pluto, the god of the underworld, is not just the god of the underworld. He's also the god of hidden treasure and wealth. I don't know if you've heard about this.
Oh.
And this is such a great positive thing. I don't want to be an advocate to Pluto, even though I do want to, but Pluto is not just about our dark side, our shadow, the Jungian shadow kind of thing. It's also the best potential of everyone. But it's usually the hidden potential, those things that we are, eventually the best in, our essence, our goal, our way to, like Pluto in the chart by house, the house where your Pluto is where you can be contributing to the style of your times the most. By doing this thing, you can be participant in your times the most, in the best possible way. But also very personally, it's those qualities that just need to be recognized and developed, but we fear them, and we don't want to always. There is a bit of a counteraction going on with everyone to not uncover what we're capable of, because this is such a great responsibility, isn't it? After that, if you know what your talents are, and Pluto is the one hiding the talents, this force, then you have to start realizing them and doing something about them, and it becomes a burden somehow. That good luck becomes a burden, because we now cannot just leave it like this. We have to do something about it. One of the burdens of very Plutonian people, because the Pluto force, which I think is really the essence of that, is that it is a force which is seeking to find someone or something that's separate, that's individual, like a human being, a person, and to use that as a channel for a bigger idea, a bigger societal idea. And this is why this Pluto force is centralizing force. So if you act through Pluto, It's not you that you're doing things, but you are kind of an agent to Pluto. And people with strong Pluto in their charts, they are naturally so. And very often situations start happening around them that make them have to participate in something which is beyond their everyday, wants and needs, and what they, just want to have fun or to have something for themselves or whatever. It's not personal anymore. Something becomes more important than your personal life. And it's almost like an obsession. That's one of the reasons why this energy tends to obsess so much and to get so like into when it gets interested in someone or something, it cannot stop itself. And that can be very harmful and not just good, I think. So the idea is that Pluto is giving us a chance to become a mouthpiece of something. Not everyone. I mean, not everyone is meant to play that role. But if you happen to have a strong Pluto, if you don't find this mission kind of thing, this thing that's extra important, more important than you, more important than ordinary reality, then Pluto can become some sort of emotional confusion and obsessions and jealousy and all those things, negative things that we connect with Pluto. Bottom line is probably that Pluto is not negative, but because it's so strong, it's almost like dealing with very strong electricity, or I don't know, some sort of power. Maybe not, electricity is not the best example because that's more Uranian, but something that's very, very powerful, and we don't have the capacity yet to harness it. And because we don't, that's why we mess up with it most of the time. And it strikes back. And not that it's intrinsically negative. That's what I'm trying to say.